When people hear the word yoga, it's often associated with stretching, flexibility, and workout. Yoga, and specifically what we'll talk about in this video, Hatha Yoga, was never supposed to be just a workout. Hatha Yoga exists because as human beings, we tend to work in the extremes. We overwork and then we crash out and we try to swing between control and ending up in collapse. Hatha Yoga offers us an opportunity to find a balance between these 2 points of producing and then filling our own cup because we are resting. Hatha Yoga doesn't force calm upon the practitioner or bypass the body of the practitioner, but rather it's a way of using the breath, the body, and the thoughts to help recenter the individual. When the body is agitated, the breath is also agitated. And when the breath is agitated, the mind cannot settle. Hatha Yoga is the practice of settling the breath and the body from the outside in. It uses physical practices to calm the body and the mind so that focus and awareness is possible without any strain. Hatha Yoga is often described as a preparatory path for other forms of yoga, such as Raja Yoga. And it's not a preparatory path for something dramatic. It's rather a preparatory path for an individual and a practitioner finding stability and calm within the mind and the breath. Hatha Yoga is very deeply practical. It asks us questions such as, can the breath move freely? Can the mind sit in awareness without getting distracted? And can the body sit in stillness without getting uncomfortable or feeling agitation? Hatha Yoga works with the body to condition it to sit in stillness. And it doesn't do it through force, it does it by creating the right environment mentally, through the breath, and physically in the muscles of the body to support that endeavor. Hatha Yoga is not about becoming somebody new. It's about teaching us how to be at ease and accepting who it is that we are. That is why it's a practice that's been around for centuries. And in this practice, we learn to find balance through a lived experience.
The word hatha is often translated as forceful, but its deeper meaning is much simpler. It's made of 2 syllables, ha and tha. Ha represents the sun energy, the active energy. Tha represents the moon energy, it's the cooling energy. And it's not about genders, but rather it's about the energetic qualities that exist within everyone. Most of us lean too far in one direction. There's too much sun energy and we become restless and overstimulated. And when there's too much moon energy, we can feel heavy, withdrawn, or stuck. And this practice of Hatha Yoga brings these 2 forces back into balance. In the yogic model, energy within the body is understood to flow through specific pathways rather than remaining static. These energetic flows influence physical functioning as well as mental and emotional states. Classical yoga describes 2 primary energy currents. One is associated with activity and outward engagement, Pingala, and the other is associated with receptivity and inward orientation, Ida. These currents, Pingala and Ida, are complementary and are intended to function in balance. When one current dominates, imbalance occurs. This imbalance may appear as physical restlessness or emotional instability. And Hatha Yoga addresses this by working to equalize these 2 energy flows through posture and poses, breath regulation, and controlled stillness. As balance is restored within the body, attention naturally stabilizes towards the central axis of the body, the spine. And within yogic anatomy, the spine is understood as the primary channel through which balanced energy and awareness can move efficiently. When we talk about Hatha Yoga today, especially in modern Western contexts, it's often reduced to posture and breath. While asana and pranayama are important, they only represent a small portion of a broader system. Classical yoga describes Hatha Yoga as engaging 8 interconnected limbs, each addressing different dimensions of the human experience. These limbs are not meant to be practiced in isolation or strictly one after another. Instead, these 8 limbs of yoga function together as a framework for balance and integration within a person. So, touching on these 8 limbs briefly, the first 2 limbs, yama and niyama, establish the ethical and personal foundations of practice. Yama concerns how we relate to others and to the world around us, while niyama addresses our relationship with ourselves. From an academical perspective, these limbs emphasize that yoga is not only a physical discipline, but also a moral and reflective one. Climbing up the ladder, asana, is the physical component most people are familiar with when they hear yoga. Traditionally, its purpose is not to perform or to create insane flexibility for the sake of it, but rather to create a body that is steady, comfortable, and capable of supporting stillness. The fifth limb, pratyahara, marks this shift from external to internal. It's the withdrawal of the senses from constant external stimulation. The final 3 limbs, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, concern increasingly with the states of refined attention. Dharana involves sustained concentration, dhyana refers to uninterrupted awareness, and samadhi describes a state in which the sense of separation between the observer and the experience diminishes. With samadhi, it shouldn't be treated as an achievement to be forced upon the practitioner, but as a natural outcome when the preceding conditions are established.
This is why yoga is not random stretching. Every time we hold a pose or we hold stillness in the body, we are working towards the same thing. We are working towards balance. And it's not balance as a concept, but rather balance as a lived experience within the body. When the sun and the moon energies within us are balanced, then the body feels grounded, the thoughts feel calm, and the breath flows more freely, more naturally. The body is the starting point for a very practical reason. If the body is uncomfortable or can't sit in stillness, then, like I said earlier, the breath will be agitated. And when the breath is agitated, the mind cannot settle. So instead of starting with the mind, we work from the outside in. We physically get ready, and then we start getting into the deeper layers of awareness and who we are past all of what you can see. So remember this, the body is not the goal. The body is the gateway. The practices that we do, from the breathing to the yoga poses, helps get the body ready in order to be able to access deeper levels of awareness and deeper levels of consciousness. Think about it this way. If you run 200 volts of electricity through a machine that's only able to handle 10 volts of electricity, that machine will burn out. And so when we try to practice higher levels of consciousness and the body is not ready, it's not going to work out very well. And so it's starting with the most foundational level. The same way when you build a home, you make sure your foundation is strong and then you build up from there. So we always come back to the basic principles of being able to sit in stillness in the body, to be able to observe the breath, observe the muscles, observe the thoughts, and come to notice what it is that we are experiencing with our senses and what we are experiencing even without our senses, to build a foundation so strong that the other levels of consciousness come to us. Asana is the physical poses that we practice in yoga. And these poses are not just meant to create strength in the body, although that is one of the purposes of why we practice, but asanas support awareness of the body as we take our bodies and experience them in these many different shapes. When the body becomes relatively still, we can begin to notice our sensations a little bit more clear. We can notice different areas in the body where we might be holding on to tension, and other areas in the body that actually feel at ease, becoming more aware of this lived experience, one sensation at a time, one moment at a time. When we stay in these shapes with awareness, we start tuning more deeply into our inner experience, our inner world, rather than focusing so much on what's going on around us. We start noticing the thoughts, the breath, the everything that is currently present on the inside. And the more that we become attuned with these experiences, the more we can gather information about how we respond to challenges, how we think about ourselves, how we perceive the world around us. And so our mats, our asanas, becomes a mirror reflection of who we are outside of our practice. When we become aware of the sensations that we are experiencing, we are building a foundational skill, because awareness of sensation comes before thoughts arise, the thoughts of the stories and the judgments that we're forming around what we're feeling. So when we just notice the sensation, we haven't yet defined this experience as good or bad. We've chosen this neutral ground of it is what it is. We haven't formed an opinion about it yet. And that is the space that yoga teaches us to live in, the space of being open, of being accepting to the reality that's in front of us. Because it's only when we accept this reality, this present moment, can we begin to take appropriate action for the next moment to change our situation in the way that we see will best fit.
Traditionally, Hatha Yoga begins with Shat Karma. Shat meaning 6, and Karma meaning action. Shat Karma are the 6 cleansing practices used to prepare the body so that the breath and energy can move freely. They're not about extreme detoxing, but rather they're about clearing obstacles. Not everyone practices all of these, and many are taught only under guidance or in gentler forms. What matters most is the principle, clearing the system before refining it. So Daudi is the cleansing of the upper digestive system. Basti is the cleansing of the lower digestive system. Neti is cleansing of the nasal passages. Nali is the controlled abdominal churning. Nali is a more advanced practice that involves controlled movements of the abs, and it's not typically something beginners do. And traditionally, it's used to stimulate digestion and internal energy once the body is already well prepared. You can think of it as a very specific way of activating the core to support internal balance. Kapalabhati is a type of breath. It's cleansing through breathing. It's using short and forceful exhalations to clear stagnation and wake up the system. Even though it's often taught as a breathing practice today, it's traditionally considered a cleansing practice. And then we have tratak, which is steady gazing with the eyes. So usually the practitioner is looking at a candle flame or a fixed point. The eyes and the mind are closely connected, so when the eyes settle, the mind tends to settle as well. Together, all of these practices highlight an important idea in Hatha Yoga. Before we work with the breath, with energy, or meditate, the system needs to be clear and functional. Shat Karma isn't about doing extreme practices, it's about creating the right conditions so everything else works more smoothly. As we get ready for practice, we can start with asanas. Asanas build a body that is strong, that is steady, and that can remain upright and support the breath without feeling any strain. Asanas are our physical practices. There are poses like downward facing dog and mountain pose. Pranayama is the breath work. We'll talk a little bit more about pranayama in the future slides, but that is the next step after asana. A mudra is a specific position or gesture of the body that helps to guide and stabilize energy. Most people think mudras are just hand gestures, but in Hatha Yoga, they can involve the hands, the body, and the breath, or a combination of all three. The purpose of a mudra is simple. It's to help energy stay collected instead of scattered. These mudras encourage inward focus and steadiness in the mind and the breath. A bandha, on the other hand, is a gentle, muscular engagement used to support and contain energy in the body. They usually involve subtle engagements of areas such as the pelvic floor, the abs, or the throat. And these engagements are not hard contractions. They are light and they are controlled, and they help the system of the body to feel stable. So you can think of bandhas as internal supports that keep energy from leaking. The mudra gives us direction, and then the bandha gives us support. And together, they help energy stay centered and move efficiently. To understand pranayama, we first need to understand prana. Prana refers to life force energy that animates the body and the mind. It's the energy that allows the heart to beat and the lungs to breathe and the nervous system to function. It's not something mystical or something separate from the body. In yoga, breath and prana are closely connected. We may not be able to directly control prana, but we can influence it through the breath. And that is why breath work is such an important doorway in yoga. The word pranayama is made up of two parts: prana, which we established as life force, and ayama, expansion, regulation, refinement. Pranayama is not simply breathing in and out, but rather it is the practice of working with breath to regulate and refine our life force energy. Think about how your breathing changes in daily life. When you're rushing, the breath becomes short or shallow, or when you're anxious, it tightens without you noticing. But when you're calm, the breath naturally slows and deepens. You don't have to force this to happen. The breath responds automatically to the state of your body and mind. Pranayama works the same way. Instead of forcing calm, it creates conditions where calm can arise. As the breath becomes calmer and more balanced, there is a point where something interesting can happen. The breath may pause. This is referred to as kumbhaka. Kumbhaka refers to the moment when the breath is contained, not moving in, not moving out. For beginners, it's important to understand that kumbhaka is not about holding your breath forcefully, but it's about noticing how the breath behaves when the system becomes quiet. There are two forms of this breath retention. The first form is called antarkumbhak. It's the internal retention that happens after an inhale. The lungs are full and the breath is briefly sustained. The purpose is to gather energy, build focus, and develop steadiness. The other type is the pause after the exhale, Bhaya Kumbhak. This is where the lungs are empty and the breath is briefly retained. And the purpose of this external retention is to deepen stillness and draw awareness inward to support a calm attention. There's another form of kumbhak. This is called kevala, and this one is particularly different because it's not something that's practiced intentionally. It cannot be forced or timed. It happens when it happens. When the body is steady, the mind is refined, the mind is quiet, and in that moment, the breath simply just doesn't need to move. There's no sense of holding, no urge to breathe in or to breathe out, and oftentimes the person only realizes that it happened after the breath resumes. It's important to remember that kumbhak is not the goal. It's not something to chase or to measure, but simply it's a sign that the system has become balanced. Hatha Yoga does not ask us to stop breathing, it asks us to create the conditions where stillness can arise safely.
As the practice deepens, Hatha Yoga begins to talk about energy. Not energy as something that's abstract, but energy is something that's experienced through movement, through vitality, and through attention. It teaches us not to push our energy in any one extreme or the other, but rather to find the balance between the two. When the body, the breath, and the mind are all balanced and centered, this energy begins to gather at the base of our spine. This is often referred to as Kundalini energy. Kundalini energy is not something that needs to be activated. It's something that is turned on naturally as an effect of balancing these different parts of who we are.
Much of what we understand about Hatha Yoga comes from the classical texts that helped organize and transmit the practice. Two key texts are the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Girandhara Samhita. While both are foundational, they represent Hatha Yoga slightly differently. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika outlines 4 primary limbs, focusing on posture, breath regulation, mudra, and inner absorption. Its approach is concise and practice-oriented, emphasizing the core methods used to prepare the body and the nervous system. There are so many gems in this book, and if this is a path that you are ready to start or to learn more about, I highly recommend looking at this book and reading it with commentaries. The Girandhara Samhita presents a 7-limb system that includes cleansing practices and a more gradual progression towards meditation. The text places strong emphasis on preparation and refinement over time. It's important to remember that these texts were never meant to replace the practice. They serve as guides that can help orient and support the lived experience, reminding us that understanding develops through practice and not theory alone.
After all of this, you are probably wondering, what does this path of Hatha Yoga lead to? Not in theory, but in actual life. And to answer that question simply, Hatha Yoga doesn't lead us somewhere distant. Actually, it leads us to more clarity in the breath, more clarity in the body, more clarity in who we are as individuals, and more clarity in the way that we live our lives on a day-to-day basis. With this practice, we become less reactive and more responsive. We are able to live in this space of awareness where we get the opportunity to pause, to choose whether the thought that we are thinking in that current moment serves us or harms us, and then moving forward appropriately, to choose the way that we respond to the external world, to mindfully choose our moment-to-moment experiences, to curate this life that we intentionally and mindfully get to live. So it's not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more of who you already are, embodying more of the wholeness, more of the love, more of the abundance that is accessible to you in each and every moment in life. Because all of those things are always just a thought away. And I'll leave you with this. This is not a path that you need to rush, and this is not a practice that you must master each time. Hatha Yoga meets you exactly where you are, and it teaches you to stay.